So, crime scene tour, then we're going to come back inside and you're going to do preliminary investigation. The preliminary investigation is an exercise in creating an educated guess, a hypothesis, a theory of what you think happened. That guess will then drive the way you do your investigation. It will change the way you look at what the suspects say. It will change the way you look at the physical evidence and the test results that you get when you perform labs. Okay? So it's a very important exercise. It is the first thing that you signed up for on here. For this particular group, it is an all. They put an A next to it. So that means that when you get this paper, Eric, Rachel, and Chevy will all put their names at the top because they're all getting credit for it. If it's numbered, then it's that person's individual responsibility to do that one. Okay? Before we begin that, and you're not going to begin that until we come back from the tour, but before we begin that, what I need you to do, we went through all the crime scene notes yesterday with one exception. We didn't finish this last part. We looked at all the physical evidence and where it was found. We looked at photographs. And photographs are great, but they don't tell the whole story. Sometimes you have to actually be there. You have to go out to the crime scene and see it with your own two eyes. That's why we're doing the tour. But we stopped when we got to the tire tracks that were found out here. After that, it talks about how Hedda Honcho's Rolls Royce was found in its regular parking spot. And then it mentions some statements made by Dusty Mock, the custodian, to the police. I want you to have an opportunity to read those before we go on the tour. I think it will be helpful in determining what happened when you read this. Okay? So your mission is to read these things on the back of the crime scene notes. When your group has done that, then I want you to go pick up the crime scene evidence key. That's this blue one. It shows where all the crime scene evidence was found in the office. There is more than that. There were other pieces of evidence found outside the office, but this was the big place. And I also want you to pick up preliminary investigation. This is the first one that you signed up for there, and make sure you get the name, period, station, and date at the top of that. Don't start filling it in, because I need to explain a little bit more first. When everyone's done that, I'll talk a little bit, and we'll go outside and do our tour. Questions? Yes?
I just need to have a file.
Okay, you can get that back in a sec, yes.
What if the person that signed up to do it isn't here?
Good question. If the person who signed up to do it isn't here, someone that is here is going to have to swap with them. You just switch numbers on the cover sheet and make sure that they're now accurate. Any other sure that they're preliminary investigation you are not doing right this second. You're going to begin it when we come back inside. Quiet, please. What I would like you to do now is, if it's an all, if everyone signed up for it, you put all their names at the top. Your period, station, and date. If it's just one person, you put their name at the top. As I said before, I'm trying to make this fair and honest so that not one person does all the work and everyone else gets credit. Let's just say here that this is Shauna's assignment. Okay, she signed up for it. And Andy and B&A decide, we don't like Shauna, we're not going to help. And they just sit there and do nothing. Okay, well, that's their choice. Of course, I'll probably take them off and give them written work because they have to stay active the entire time. But if that is what happens, then when it becomes V&A's assignment, you know what I'm going to do if I'm Shauna? Nothing. I'm not going to help her because I believe in what goes around comes around, right? Correct. So hopefully that won't be the case. Hopefully you guys will have a good attitude and you'll help each other on everything. So everything becomes a group assignment. But remember, it is your grade. So let's just say Shauna has bad handwriting and she's going to let Andy do the writing on the paper. I don't have any problem with that. Okay? But it's her name on the top. It's her that it's she that's getting the grade on it. Okay? But hopefully you guys will work together on all of these. I'm just going to go through a few of these first because when we come back, I want you to be able to get right to it. You're writing down some just basic factual information about the crime to begin with. The when, where, how, why kind of stuff. You don't know. We don't know who did this at this point. I don't expect you to know by day 3. But what you're going to be doing is giving me an educated guess based on the evidence that you've seen up to this point. What you will have seen when we do the crime scene tour. What you're going to talk about here aren't specific people. You're not going to say, you know, she's a kiss-up or Edward Honcho. You might make a little mention of Edward Honcho because we did hear about the husband. You do know about a husband so far, and you do know he married her after she got her inheritance. But your theory should be based on what you learned so far, up to this point. It shouldn't be based on just wild guesses. Well, I think Mr. Franz did it, because he's a math teacher, and I don't like math teachers. I don't know, okay? It should be based on what we actually have learned. So don't go off and start talking about people you've learned nothing about. It should only be talking about Edward Honcho a little tiny bit, Dusty Mop, you learned a little bit about him, and Hedda Honcho. That doesn't mean you can't say, I think a teacher had a grudge against Hedda Honcho for this, and that teacher did come into the building through this door, did this to Hedda Honcho, and took Hedda Honcho out this door. That's your whole theory. And that is what you're going to be writing for number 10. Number 10 is the big one. That's why there's so much space. You're going to tell me the story of what happened from beginning to end. And when you tell that story, you're going to include things like how they got in, how they got out, how they got Hedda Honcho to move from point A to point B, all of that. The reason they did it, all of that's going to be described here. Okay? That theory then will change the way you do the rest of the investigation. For instance, if in your theory you think, based on the evidence in there, that there was a struggle, that the two fought with each other, okay? That's your theory, and you based it on the evidence. Well, would you consider then suspects that are very, very small? Do you think someone like, I don't know, Florence Nightingale, a very small person, that they would have gone in and manhandled Hedda Honcho and fought with her, had a fist fight with her and drug her out? I mean, that would not be what I would expect. I would expect someone that isn't very strong or very big to use a gun, a weapon of some sort, to make that person go with them. Are you following this? Okay? So that changes the kind of suspects I'm looking at. If the evidence doesn't support that there was a weapon used, then I'm not going to look for, you know, people that need a weapon. I'm going to look for other kind of people. All right? So let's say another example would be, you think Hedda Honcho was taken away in the trunk of a car. Then when you look at the suspects, when we watch the interviews in a few days, you're only going to look at people that have a car that could be used to transport the suspect or have access to a car like that. It changes the way you look at the whole case. So what we're going to need now to go outside and do the crime scene tour is this map. You'll need at least one page to put your notes down on. To put your notes down on if you pick up on an important clue. And I'll tell you guys, clues are big and they're teeny, teeny, tiny. And some of them are staring you right in the face and you don't even realize it. Okay? And we're going to use those clues to put together this story when we come back in. So you're going to take this with you, a piece of paper to keep your notes on. That's for the whole group, and something to write on. If you want to take your case file for that, that's fine. Okay? Before we go out, let me just mention one other thing. I'll wait. The process that we're going through, the reason you're doing this is not busy work, this is real important, is you're learning to do deductive reasoning. Deductive reasoning means working backwards from the end. Okay? So let's say that I gave you a cake. Marley. I gave Marley a cake, and she said, oh, this is the best cake ever. And now she needs to figure out what went into the cake, because I'm going to tell you, it's my secret family recipe. Okay? She now has to work backwards. She has to deduce, figure out from the thing that's already done what went into it. You're doing the same thing with this mystery.
Like unfolding origami?
You're working with this crime scene. The person's already gone. They've already been kidnapped. There's a mess in the office. There's evidence all over the place. And you're now looking at it and trying to recreate what happened before that to create that scene. That's deductive reasoning. Some of you have that skill, some not so much. And you might need a little work on it. Let me just give you another example here. See my hand? Anyone notice I had a little injury there?
Where?
Okay.
Where?
Right here on my hand. Okay. Now maybe you didn't notice that injury. Maybe you did. And maybe you thought, I didn't see that yesterday. Okay? Well, you're right. It wasn't there yesterday. So that injury occurred between yesterday and today. Using your skills as a detective and deductive reasoning, you should be able to figure out precisely how I got that injury. And I want you to guess, once we come back inside, I'll give you an opportunity to tell me what you think happened. But just figuring out, knowing me as a person, knowing what I might have done between yesterday and today, you might be able to figure out how I hurt myself. Okay? That's deductive reasoning. Grab your stuff, meet me in front of the library. Tell me what you think. Make like kitty litter. You don't know that expression? Man, I've been trying this for like 5 years to get this expression going. You know, kitty litter, when it gets wet, it all clumps.
Sorry, we don't know a lot about that.
You gotta help me. You gotta help me with this expression.
I usually don't use kitty litter.
You don't use kitty litter? You personally? You know, I just read about they actually have a human litter box. Yes. Yes. Okay.
I'm gonna buy that. How much is it?
All right. For some of you, you might think this is stupid what we're doing. Why would we go walk around school? That's the very thing I said I don't want people to do. Why are we walking around school looking at the same stuff you've seen for 2.5 years? You're sick of this place, you're ready to get out of here, right? Well, the truth is that hopefully you haven't been walking around this school thinking like a criminal. As a detective, you need to put yourself in that mindset. Now when you walk the halls, instead of thinking which way gets me to Mrs. Sears' class or which way gets me to the cafeteria, think, I'm going to kidnap someone. How am I going to get into the principal's office, and how am I going to get back out? Okay? And in doing so, what things am I going to take with me? What evidence would I leave behind that I was there? And as I said to you before, guys, there's all sorts of clues that, excuse me, goodbye. There's all sorts of clues that are missed by the average person because they don't know what they're looking at. I mean, you could have a clue right under your nose right now, and you could be totally oblivious of, which many of you are. You know, a detective might go, that's important. That gum right there on the ground is important. That one over there by Rachel's feet is not. Now, they know what to look for there on the gum, but others may not, okay? That's the skill that you've got to develop. So as we go through, remember, what you're looking for is ways to get in and ways to get out, and what might have happened to this whole setting. Ruben, what might have happened in this whole setting that caused the evidence that you see on the evidence key? When I say kitty litter, that means clump together, get close. Make sure the short people can get in the front so they can see too, okay? We're gonna move on to get out. You know, I just learned, I've been here 13 years, and I just learned first period something that I didn't know. I asked students, how many ways can you get in and out of this part of the building to leave the building altogether, okay? And we know up here there's a bunch, but let's just focus on this corridor behind us here. If you go down that way, how many exits will eventually lead you out of the building?
3, 4,
Keep going.
6.
6 is the answer. Let's go through them. Locker rooms. Girls, boys locker room. Mr. Franz. Mrs. Sears has a door that leads out. I did not know that.
Yeah, I
Okay.
did.
And then there are the 2 doors at the end of the hallway. Okay. And then there's the doorway that leads up into the cafeteria, and you can get out from there. So you need to consider, how did your suspect get in and out? Let's go on. I said I don't want people to. Through the cafeteria, how many doors will lead out? How many exits?
5.
Double door there. Double door here. Yeah.
Okay.
1, 2,
4.
5. Okay. I know there's one here. I know there's one behind the stage that gets to that hall. And yeah. And then I think there's at least one in the kitchen, right? I don't know if you guys can see through there. All right. Next up, the entryway here, I would like stations 1 through 4 to be by the fish tank, 5 through 8 by the doors. Personally, some of you don't know what station you're at, do you? 1 through 4 are over here. You guys are all 5, 6, 7, and 8?
Yeah.
Yes? Okay. I'm going to take you in 2 groups, guys. so we can fit in the office. I can tell you, I'll just be honest, that I don't think they would let just any teacher bring their classes in here. They've let me because my students typically are very quiet and respectful. And if you're not, you interfere with not only us being able to do this, but me being able to do this with all my classes in the future. So I know you guys will be quiet and respectful. You guys will wait outside, and I'll take those guys in first, show them the stuff, look for me to wave you in, and then you'll come in and join us, okay? But what I want to point out here is, we know this is one of the main points of entry. The last one. One of the main points of entry into the building are these doors right here, these triple doors. And as I mentioned, these pusher bars are in the out position. So the only way you can get in is with a key from the outside or someone pushing this on the inside. Okay? But there was no sign of forced entry. It should tell you something right there about the type of suspects, about the means that they would need to have to commit this crime. Okay? First group, we're going to head on in here. You guys look for me to signal you. This is Sears Classic with this, and this tells a story. All this physical evidence should tell you a story. What happened here to create the scene that you see? Remember that the objects in this room, that's not why we're in here. The objects have changed, okay? You're not going to find some, hair or fiber sample here now. What we're looking at is the kind of the lay of the land. Where were things positioned? How far apart were they? We know that the high heel shoe was found in that doorway, okay? And that there were fibers and fingerprints found throughout. That's what the little shirt and hand symbol mean. Along this wall was a bookcase. It went almost over that entire window. That window looks into the next office. It does not open, okay? The bookshelves that were disturbed were about this high and this high, okay? That's where we had items that had been knocked over. In this corner back here, we had a little mini refrigerator. And there were fingerprints found there, as well as on the blinds. Okay, the blinds that were closed there, and over here, you saw the picture of in class. And you can always go back and look at those pictures again on my webpage. They will be helpful to you along the way. Another desk ran across this wall, and this desk had a computer on it. The principal's chair was right here, and then the main desk in front. So from the wall where the bookcase was to the desk was probably about this much space. Right here about where Rachel's standing is where we had the soda spill with the paper on top, right in here. Ransom note was here. Brownie, what did I say? Yeah, just take them on outside into the hall, please. Thank you.
There's a camera.
The brownie was right next to it, okay? Right about where Zach is standing, we had the Pepsi can with the lip print that was found on it, and a chair that was upright. Another chair was turned over right here, and then the phone on the ground. In this corner, guys, was a plant.
Do I need to come out there?
Are there any questions about anything? Yes.
Is that door there?
The door is there. You don't see it on the picture because I'm taking it from that direction, but that leads into the conference room, which is where you guys are going now. Looking for is ways to get. You guys, as 8th graders, have probably been to just about every part of the building, save one. I know some of you have been in here, although you're really not supposed to be. This is hallowed territory, where teachers get to sit around and talk about how much they hate you. No, I'm just kidding.
That's
They don't really
messed
do
up.
that.
That's
No.
discrimination.
It's the teachers' lounge, okay?
I've been there.
Wait here for a sec. I want to make sure I don't upset anyone by taking you guys through. See, we don't all say nasty things about you guys. I'm going to have patience, respect, all those things for you. Synergy. Working together. All right. The reason I'm taking you through here, guys, is, again, there's some things you can see from standing here that you can't get any other way. In particular, I'm pointing to this direction. Look out the window. To your right, you can see where we just came from. You can see the principal's office first. The window at the very end. Okay? Those windows don't open. That's the west one that looks towards the bike racks. The next two are the conference room. Okay? And again, looking out this way, you're going to see it with a different perspective that you won't have any other way. And I'm going to point this out to you at the end of the mystery probably, and you'll go, oh, I can't believe I didn't realize that. All right, looking back this way, you know that if you grabbed her, let's say you got her, now you want to leave the building. You could go back out the way we came. You can go out another way into the counselor's office and the nurse's office. You guys know about those. And then there's two other ways to get out of there. Everyone familiar with those? The door that goes to this hallway over here, and the door that goes to the hallway we came down. But from here, if you brought her this way, you could go out through this door. To your right are a couple restrooms, male, female, and then you're out to the main hall again. And you can go this way. It'll lead you out to the main hall. Remember, Ruben, stand up. One of the things you're going to have to do on your final write-up and on this next activity is describe the route they took. So you're starting to put this together. When we go outside, I need you to stand up against the lockers right by Mrs. Mansker's room. So they got out of the main building, but you got some testimony about the gates. What did they say about the gates? What did Dusty Mop say about the gates? Okay, so let's assume now that that's true. If the gates were locked, how did they get out? You got to ask yourself that. We've got a south gate, we've got a north gate over there by the portables, and a west gate. Were they locked? Were they not locked? I don't know. Why would they go out the west gate is the next question. We know, we think that they went out the west gate because we found our next piece of evidence there, which was?
Shoe.
The shoe. When you go out that way, guys, I have the area cordoned off, marked off with police tape. Eric's going to spit out his gum for the umpteenth time on the way there. And when we go out, please stay on the sidewalk the whole way so that you don't disturb our last piece of evidence. Very important. They went out the west gate. There is some actual physical evidence that you can look at here. This is one of the only places where you can see the physical evidence yet. Later on, I'll let you deal with some of it in class, in the labs. I need you to stand off the dirt on the sidewalk. Jack just stepped on some very important evidence over there. Remember, we found the shoe just outside the gate over here. In this area, right about where Jack was standing, there are a number of shoe marks. It's hard to get an impression because it's sand, but there are marks there, and you can examine that when I'm done talking. You got to look closely. You got to know what you're looking at. The average person would just look at this and not even think anything about it. They may not even notice the tire tracks. There's two clues about what are the newest tire tracks. Can someone tell me what they are? The two clues.
How like deep they are and like color?
Deep is not one. Color is one. So the newer tracks are going to be
Lighter. Brown.
darker. Why are they darker?
Because it gets darker as you go deeper.
Why?
Is the moist?
Yes. So Ruben said it. As you go deeper, it gets darker. The water in the surface of the dirt is going to dry up first, and then the stuff down below stays more moist. So you can see this print here, or this track here, and the one close to you there are the newer ones. They're darker. The second clue that these are the most recent ones are what? Can't figure that one out?
Oh, like there are no one's like touched them yet, so they're like clean.
All right, you're on the right track. No pun intended.
They're not
You
as
see
far
this
into the
track
ground.
right here that crosses this one?
Those are flatter.
This is the one we think is the new one. That one that crosses, where it crosses, it disappears. That's because the new one is on top. Get it?
Yeah.
So whatever's on top is the newest track. Those are the types of things you learn to look for as the investigator. What's on top? Now, if you were, let's say, following someone, you were following their footprints that they've left, and you saw print, 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 what would that indicate?
That they were walking?
Running.
That they were walking and then they began to run. Correct. Okay? Same thing is true here. Looking at these tire tracks, not only can you see that a car was here, but you could tell me something about the car's motion. And I'll give you a hint. If you know something about cars, front wheel drive, rear wheel drive, that tells you even more information. Now you can look at this and you can recreate in your head what happened. Okay? I want you to take a minute or two. You can walk all the way around here. You can look at the prints and marks over there. Make any final conclusions, then head inside to begin work on preliminary investigation. You're looking at. A few things I want to point out. First of all, the biggest reason people do poorly on this project is not following directions. And the biggest direction they don't follow is writing incomplete sentences. We talked about this yesterday in our teacher meeting. And I talked with Mrs. Shirk, and I said, it's just driving me nuts. This is one of the things you guys score very poorly on, is being able to take information and summarize it. But more specifically, summarize it in complete sentences. And I said, are they having the same problems in your class? She says, no, not really. So I'm kind of taking it personally. And I think we realize that you guys sometimes forget that Mrs. Shirk knows a lot of science. And I know some English and some language arts. And I don't expect you to walk out of her room and come over here and forget all those skills. How to write in a complete sentence. Apparently you know how to do it, but you think it doesn't matter in here, even though I've said it over and over again. It does matter. This is one of the worksheets that was done yesterday by another class. You tell me, sentence or not? This is for motive. The kidnapper might have wanted money, so maybe a teacher. No is the answer. Maybe a teacher, what? They don't explain. They leave that part out. A parent that was upset with the school. Sentence or not? No. A parent that was upset with the school did what? They don't say that. The assistant principal wanted to be the principal. Yes or no?
Yeah.
Yes, that is a sentence. It has a subject, it has a verb. The principal wanted to be the principal. And it makes sense by itself. The custodian, because she leaves too much of a mess. No. The custodian what? The custodian was mad because the principal leaves too much of a mess. It didn't explain that part, okay? So if you're unclear about whether or not it's a sentence or not as you're working through these assignments, and all of them need to be in sentences unless I tell you otherwise, ask. Bring it up and show it to me before you turn it in. I'll tell you if it is. Ruben.
People that wrote that could have just been like pressed for time or something. And so they're like, I'm going to just write really fast. And then so that just like turned to crap?
No. Not on this one. That does sometimes happen, but I don't think that's just a matter of being pressed for time.
Maybe they just wanted to get
I
over.
gave 22 minutes to this class to do 3 questions.
You gave us 12 minutes.
No, that was the second day.
Oh,
Okay? So anyway, the other thing I brought up is that my injury here, I said using deductive reasoning you might be able to figure out how I got that. Anyone have the answer?
I didn't get it close enough with that.
Anyone have the answer?
You hit yourself with a sledgehammer?
Someone told you, didn't they? Yes, admit it. Someone told you. Okay, deductive reasoning. What did he do today that he doesn't normally do?
It's fixing
Because that's usually how you get hurt, doing something you don't normally do, right? And I was out there pounding in those stakes to mark off the area that you were just at.
Mini
And
sledgehammer?
hit it with a sledgehammer. No, a full-size one.
Oh.
Okay? So that's deductive reasoning, working backwards. And I also mentioned to you guys that clues are often right underneath your nose and you don't notice them. You're just oblivious. And at least one of you did notice a clue today that was right underneath your nose. What was it, Zach?
It was, the name tag says EH did it.
Written right on my name tag, up here in the corner. I saw him staring at it earlier. It says EH, Edward Honcho did it. Okay? And that was right there under your nose. And how many of you didn't notice it?
I saw it.
Now, just so you know, guys, that isn't the answer. That isn't the solution. Okay? I just put it on there to see if anyone would notice. But that's my point. As an investigator, you know and you notice things that others don't. You got to put those skills into practice. Have a good one. Just so you